There is a specific kind of cold in the northern mountains that doesn't just bite your skin. It reaches into your chest and weighs your heartbeat down. Most men fight it. They shiver, they rub their hands, they curse the sky, and eventually they die trying to stay warm. But there is a second type of man. A man who stops shivering, who simply accepts that the cold is now part of his blood and keeps walking. You've probably spent your whole life trying to build discipline. You try to find the right routine, the right motivation, and the right time to start. You bargain with your fatigue. You argue with your alarm clock, and you lose. Today, you are going to hear the story of a boy who had to let the soft, pleading voice inside his head die, so that a survivor could be born. It was the winter of 1582, in the borderlands of the Kaizo Valley. His name was Ren. He was 17, and he was a courier for the Matsudera clan. The job was simple. Take a sealed scroll, run across the mountain passes, and deliver it to the neighboring outposts. It required stamina, but more than that, it required a quiet mind. Ren did not have a quiet mind. He had a loud, persuasive, brilliant mind that was entirely dedicated to making his life easier. Every morning, the valley bell would ring at dawn. And every morning, Ren's mind would begin its work. "It's raining today," the voice would say. "The mud will slow you down. If you wait an hour for the sun to break through, you'll actually make better time. It's a tactical delay." Ren would listen, and he would wait. When it was time to run the steep ridge of Mount Hiei, his lungs would burn, and the voice would return. "You're pushing too hard. If you tear a muscle, you'll be useless to the clan. Walk this stretch, and save your strength for the descent." Ren would walk. He wasn't a coward, he was just reasonable. He always had a perfectly logical excuse for why he needed to stop, delay, or rest. And because he always eventually delivered the messages, no one noticed, until the day the sky turned black. A sudden, violent snowstorm swept through the valley. Ren was halfway to the garrison at Nakatsugawa with a critical dispatch, an order to reinforce the eastern bridge against a bandit raid. The wind began to howl, and the snow blinded him. Ren found a small, dry cave beneath a limestone overhang. The voice in his head spoke up, calm and rational as always. "If you freeze to death, the message never arrives. Wait out the storm. It will pass by nightfall, and you can run the rest of the way in the dark." It made sense. It was logical. So Ren sat in the cave, pulled his cloak tight, and waited. The storm passed. Ren ran through the night, pushing himself to the limit, feeling quite proud of his endurance. He arrived at the garrison just before dawn. He handed the scroll to the outpost commander, but the commander didn't open it. He just looked at Ren, his face covered in soot and dried blood. "The bridge fell 4 hours ago," the commander said, his voice hollow. "They burned the granary. We lost 12 men." Ren felt the blood drain from his face. The storm. I had to take shelter to ensure the message survived." The commander stepped forward. He didn't yell, and he didn't strike him. He simply took the iron courier's badge from Ren's chest and threw it into the mud. "You didn't protect the message," the commander whispered. "You protected your comfort. Go home, boy. You are of no use to this war." Ren was banished to the lower village, reduced to splitting wet wood for the blacksmiths. The shame was a physical weight, and he couldn't look anyone in their eye. He tried to train, telling himself he would run the lower trails every night to win back his honor. On Monday, he ran for an hour. Tuesday, his legs ached, so he decided to study maps instead. Wednesday, it rained. And by Friday, he was just splitting wood again. He couldn't escape his own bargaining. The voice was stronger than his guilt. One evening, while carrying a load of ash behind the forge, he saw a man sitting on a stump. He was old, dressed in frayed grey wool, with a face like weathered stone. 2 of his fingers were missing on his left hand. It was Kuro, an old pathfinder. He was a man the villagers whispered about, a scout who had survived alone in the Northern Territories for 3 years during the border wars. Kuro was watching him. "You swing that axe like it's too heavy for you," Kuro grunted, spitting a sunflower seed into the dirt. Ren stopped, wiping sweat from his brow. "The wood is wet, the blade is dull, the wind is cold." Kuro stood up, his joints popping. "I've watched you for a month. If the world isn't perfect, you sit on your hands." Ren tightened his grip on the axe handle. "You don't know anything about me." "I know 12 men are dead because you listened to the whisper that tells you to stop," Kuro said bluntly. Ren froze, and the axe slipped from his hands. "There is a rot in your mind," Kuro continued, stepping closer. "You think everything is a choice. If you want to fix it, meet me at the old shrine on the Weeping Ridge tomorrow. First crow calls we start. If you're late, don't ever talk to me again." Kuro walked away into the fog. That night, Ren couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling. The ridge was a 3-hour climb. "What can an old man teach me?" The voice whispered. "It's probably a trick. You're a woodcutter now. Just accept it." At 2 in the morning, the wind rattled the shutters. Ren closed his eyes. Then he saw the soot and blood on the commander's face. Ren threw off the blanket, and he put on his boots. Ren reached the Weeping Ridge, while the sky was still a bruised purple. The air was thin and bit at his lungs like glass. Kuro was already there, poking at a fire that had burned down to embers. A crow cawed in the distance. Kuro didn't offer a greeting. He simply pointed to a pile of heavy river stones at the edge of the clearing. "Pick up a stone, carry it down to the river, bring a different stone back. Do this until the sun touches the peak of Mount Hiei." Ren looked at the stones. They were 50 pounds each, and the river was a mile down a steep, treacherous slope. "What does this have to do with being a courier?" "Nothing," Kuro said, not looking up from the fire. "Pick it up." Ren gritted his teeth, hoisted a stone to his chest, and began the descent. The first 2 hours were agony. His shoulders screamed, and his boots slipped on the wet pine needles. And the voice in his head was screaming louder than his muscles. "This is pointless. He's torturing you. Put the stone down. He won't even know." On his 5th trip, halfway up the slope, Ren stumbled. The stone fell, rolling into the brush, and Ren collapsed into the mud, gasping for air. "Just sit here for 5 minutes," the voice reasoned. 5 minutes to catch your breath. Then you'll be stronger for the rest of the climb. It was the same voice from the cave. The exact same logic. Ren looked at his muddy hands. He forced himself to his feet, dragged the stone back up to his chest, and kept walking. When the sun finally touched the peak of the mountain, Ren dropped the last stone at Kuro's feet. He was covered in mud, shaking, his hands raw and bleeding. Kuro kicked the stone to make sure it was solid. "Tomorrow," Kuro said, "we do it again." For 3 weeks, there was no secret technique. There were only the stones, the river, and the mountain. The physical toll bled into his daily life. One evening, Ren sat in the back room of the forge, eating a bowl of cold rice. His hands were wrapped in dirty rags, but fresh blood seeped through the linen, smearing the rim of his wooden bowl. The master blacksmith, a heavy-set man named Toba, slammed a hammer down on the table, spilling Ren's water. "Look at you," Toba sneered. "You're dropping tongs. You can't even hold a bellow rope. Kuro is a crazy old ghost, and you're carrying rocks while we have actual iron to forge. You're making a fool of yourself, boy. Wash the blood off your hands before you touch my tools tomorrow." Ren ate his rice in silence, staring at the red stains on the bowl. The exhaustion was setting deep into his bones. On the 28th day, it rained. Not a drizzle, but a freezing, torrential downpour that turned the mountain slope into a slide of brown sludge. Ren was on his third trip up from the river. The rock was slick, and he was shivering violently. 50 yards from the top, his boot caught a root, and he went down hard. The rock slammed into his collarbone, pinning him in the mud. He tasted copper. He lay there in the freezing rain, waiting for Kuro to come down and help him. But Kuro didn't come. Ren pushed the rock off and looked up the hill. Kuro was standing at the ridge, smoking a wooden pipe under a wide straw hat, just watching him. Something inside Ren snapped. "I'm not doing it." Ren screamed, his voice cracking over the sound of the rain. He kicked the 50-pound stone down the hill. "This is stupid. Carrying rocks isn't going to bring those dead men back. You're not teaching me anything." He scrambled up the mud, furious, with tears of frustration mixing with the rain on his face, and stormed past Kuro. "I'm done with this," Ren spat. Kuro didn't look at him. He just puffed on his pipe. "Then go home." Ren walked away, and he didn't look back. He hiked down to the village, stripped off his wet clothes, and crawled into his cart. He told himself he was right. He told himself Kuro was just a bitter old man abusing him for sport, and he stayed in bed for 14 hours. But when he woke up in the dark, the silence of the room was deafening. The voice in his head, the one that had told him to quit, was quiet now, completely satisfied. It had won. And Ren realized he hated that voice more than he hated the mountain. He remembered the commander's face. He looked at his torn, bleeding hands. If he stopped now, he wasn't just a failed courier. He was a coward who couldn't even carry a rock. At dawn, Ren walked back up the mountain. He reached the ridge. Kuro was sitting by the fire, just as he always was. Ren didn't offer an apology, and he didn't make a grand speech about his return. He simply felt deeply humiliated. He walked past the old man, went down to the river, picked up a stone, and brought it back. Kuro didn't praise him. He just nodded toward the river. "Your grip is too high. Fix it on the next one." 2 weeks later, Ren woke up violently ill. A fever burned behind his eyes. His joints ached with a deep, throbbing pain, and every breath rattled in his chest like dry leaves. The voice returned, loud and compassionate. "You are sick. If you go into the cold today, it will turn into pneumonia. Kuro will understand." Ren dragged himself out of his hut. He stumbled up the trail, falling twice, vomiting bile into the ferns. It took him 2 hours just to reach the ridge. Kuro was standing by the fire. He looked at Ren's pale, sweat-drenched face. "I am sick," Ren gasped, leaning against a tree. "I cannot carry the stones today." Kuro stared at him. "Can you carry a pebble?" Ren blinked, confused. "A pebble? Yes, but what is the point of a pebble?" "Because you told me you would carry stone every day," Kuro said, his voice flat. "Does a fever make you a liar?" Kuro stepped closer. "Do you think wars pause because a scout has a fever? You do not have to carry 50 pounds today. But you will carry something. You will go down to the river. You will pick up a rock the size of a plum, and you will bring it up. you will keep the motion alive. Ren understood. It wasn't about the weight. It was about refusing to let the mind realize that stopping was an option. Ren walked down to the river. It took him an hour. He picked up a smooth, grey pebble, walked back up, and handed it to Kuro. Then he went home and slept for 14 hours. The next day, the fever broke. He returned to the heavy stones, and the pattern remained perfectly intact. 3 months later, the true test arrived. Not a test of strength, but a test of reality. The training on the mountain was controlled, but real life is chaos. A messenger arrived in the lower village, his horse lathered in sweat, an arrow broken off in his shoulder. The northern pass had been ambushed by a mercenary company, and the main Matsudaira army was marching straight into a trap. "They need to know," the messenger choked out, collapsing into the arms of the blacksmith. "The army is 2 days away. The path through the Iron Crags is the only way to intercept them in time." The villagers fell silent. The Iron Crags were a nightmare of jagged rock, sheer drops, and freezing winds. To run them in the dark, with snow threatening, was a death sentence. Their active couriers were either dead or days away. Kuro stepped out from the shadows of the forge. He didn't look at the messenger. He looked at Ren. Ren was holding an axe. He set it down. He didn't look for validation, and he didn't feel a surge of heroic adrenaline. He simply felt the quiet rhythm of his own pulse. He walked to the messenger, took the blood-stained scroll, and secured it inside his leather tunic. "Take the high ridge," Kuro said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The wind will try to push you off. Let it push. Lean into the stone." Ren bowed his head. He turned and ran into the tree line. The first 6 hours were a brutal, grinding ascent. By midnight, Ren was high in the crags. The temperature had plummeted. The wind was a physical force, screaming through the canyons and slamming into him like a wooden beam. His boots crunched on the black ice. Every step was a calculation of survival. At 2 in the morning, disaster struck. Ren was traversing a narrow ledge when the shale beneath his left foot gave way. He slipped, sliding toward the abyss. He threw his arms out, catching a jagged root with his right hand. The impact wrenched his shoulder, tearing a muscle. Pain exploded down his arm. He dangled over a drop of 400 feet. His shoulder screamed, and his fingers were going numb. And right there, hanging over the void, the soft voice came back. "You tried. Nobody could blame you for falling here. You have a torn shoulder. The ice is too slick. Just let go. It will be warm soon. You did your best." Ren closed his eyes. He didn't argue with it. He didn't try to motivate himself with thoughts of honor, or duty, or saving their army. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions freeze at high altitudes. Instead, he remembered the pebble. He remembered the heavy stones. He remembered the mud and the rain, and the day he walked away only to realize he could not live with the man he was becoming. His body executed the only protocol it knew. The movement does not stop. With a roar of pure mechanical exertion, Ren swung his legs, caught a foothold, and dragged himself over the ledge. He lay on the ice for 3 seconds, his chest heaving. Then he stood up. He tucked his injured arm into his belt to keep it immobile, and he kept walking. At noon the next day, the vanguard of the Matsudaira army was marching through a narrow gorge when they saw a figure standing in the center of the road. It was a boy covered in frost, his right arm bound tightly to his side, his face pale and hollow. The vanguard captain rode forward, drawing his sword. Who goes there? Clear the path. Ren didn't speak. He reached into his tunic with his good hand, pulled out the scroll, and held it out. The captain took it, broke the seal, and read it. His eyes widened. He immediately shouted orders to halt the march and turn the columns around. The ambush had been avoided. A field medic ran up to Ren, throwing a heavy wool blanket over his shoulders. Boy, you ran the crags. In this weather, how did you survive? How did you keep going? Ren looked at the medic. He could have told a grand story. He could have talked about willpower, or the warrior spirit, or the fires of Anna. Instead, Ren just looked at the frozen mud beneath his boots. I just didn't stop, Ren whispered. He didn't wait for praise, and he didn't wait for a medal. He turned and began the long, slow walk back toward his village, because the voice in his head was gone, and in its place there was only the quiet step of a man who had work to do.